Meanwhile, both Clinton and Trump campaigns are questioning a massive media merger that happened over the weekend. The nation's second largest wireless carrier, AT&T, announced it would be buying Time Warner in a deal valued at over $85 billion.
That deal would give AT&T control of Time Warner's media portfolio. Of course, that includes the Warner Brothers Studio, HBO, CNN, and TNT. Jill Schlesinger is here with us to talk about how this deal could shake up the media and telecommunications industries. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
All right, so let's talk this deal. How does AT&T and Time Warner benefit?
Well, for AT&T, which owns the pipes, the means of distribution as a telecom company, what they said was, wait a second, the whole deal here is content. Who has content? Oh, Time Warner, they've got content. Let's go grab them. And the price tag, although it's a big number, I think they believe it's not as expensive as many would suspect because they'll do more with it. Now, from Time Warner's point of view, this is a huge win. This is a company that 2 years ago rebuffed an offer for $10 billion less. Now, 2 years later, they're taking $85 billion off. If you also remember, Time Warner involved in another mega transaction way back when you were children in the year 2000.
I remember it well.
AOL, Time Warner, one of the worst deals in the history of all deal making. This is a real win for Jeff Bewkes, the chairman of Time Warner. I think it's a good deal for them. Consumers, we're not so sure just yet.
Really?
Neither is the government, right? They're going to have to take a look at that.
Oh, you remember 5 years ago, Comcast and NBC Universal merged. Is this pretty much a similar type of setup?
Well, it is, except with something a little bit different. First of all, it's a much larger deal, so that makes it different. But I think regulators, and we talk about like it will take a long time for this to pass the regulators' muster, they are going to be looking, what is the impact on consumers? That is the #1 concern. And you may wake up this morning, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, saying like, wait a minute, am I going to have to switch to AT&T to get my Game of Thrones? The answer is probably not. You know, if you think about the world of economics as a series of carrots or sticks, you could say, hey, there's a stick here. They might say to a non-AT&T customer, you've got to join our network to get our good stuff. I don't think that's going to pass the regulators. But what if you were at another wireless communication company, you love Game of Thrones, and AT&T said to you, you join my network, and when you stream our content through our network, it won't count towards your data plan. That might get me to come over and be on the AT&T network. Those carrots, I think, are what AT&T is interested in. The regulators are going to be very interested to make sure that consumers don't have to pay more or jump into the AT&T network to get something they're already getting.
But see, that's an interesting question, Jill, because so AT&T's chairman and CEO Randall Stephenson called it a question of vertical integration. But I know, for example, I have Time Warner Cable, which I know is spun off from Time Warner, the company, some time ago. But Time Warner Cable doesn't offer everything that I actually get. If I want to stream something, even though I'm already paying for it in my basic package, I can't stream, for example, ABC on my Apple TV because they don't have a deal with Time Warner. Are consumers facing that if this goes through?
Yes, and I think that's another area where we're going to look at the terms of this deal, and maybe the regulators come back and say, you can't do everything you want. There are certain conditions we're going to put on this. Subject to approval, then you'll get it. Now, you talk about vertical integration, which is a very fancy way of saying, like, sort of old manufacturing term. I own the content, I own the distribution. Think of it like a supermarket, right? So you say, I own a food company, I own a supermarket. That's vertical integration. Whereas a horizontal integration would be like, I have two big supermarkets that merge. Previously, the regulators have not loved horizontal integration so much when it comes to these big mega deals, but vertical they've kind of let go through. This is such a big deal. I think it also calls into question, what is the future here? How many competitors are going to be left? I would suggest there's something kind of cool that's going on. I think these telecom companies are really nervous. They are not nervous about, say, Sprint or T-Mobile. They're nervous that Google is going to become, and Netflix, and these, the FANGs, the Facebook, the Amazon, the Netflix, and the Googles will be their competitors. They're laying down their own fiber optic networks. They're investing in this. That could be actually quite beneficial to consumers because guess what? Those companies know how to make money from us in lots of different ways, and they don't necessarily mean that we pay a higher subscription rate.
It's interesting because, as you point out, this is something that we may be thinking of it as what a big deal. What are the choices that are going to be made available to consumers? But the reality is there's a lot more choice than there might have been 10 or 15 years ago. This is still two traditional companies, an old school media company and an old, what used to be a telephone company, merging together, and you've got these other entities, Google, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think how they enter the marketplace, that's going to be the really next interesting place. Now, are you guys cord cutters or not?
I would like to, but I think it betrays us a little bit considering what we do for a living, you know? Yeah, we have to have a fancy world.
I think that what's kind of interesting also is that this deal is sort of an effort to say to a cord cutter, hey, why don't you add up all these different services that you're buying a la carte, then compare it with what we have, and maybe we're going to start to see some cord cutters reverse course and be like, whoa, wait a minute, now that they have all that stuff, maybe I go back to that traditional pricing model because it's actually cheaper, because when you start to add up all those separate subscriptions, presuming you're paying, then all of a sudden it does start to add up. So it's going to be an interesting time. I, of course, still have a landline. That's how old I am.
Well, I give everybody my money. I've got Xbox, PlayStation, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire. I've got everything. You know, so
you're a good consumer. Thank you.
I'm the target audience, man. I'm not in the demo anymore, though. I'm about to creep out of the demo. Almost.
Hurts.
Jill Schlesinger, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.